Have you ever wondered what really makes or breaks a business? It's not always about having a killer product. A lot of the time, it comes down to this hidden, constant challenge, managing capacity. So today, we're going to dive into this puzzle of how companies try to balance what they can produce with what we all want to buy.
We have all been there. You walk into a store to get that one thing you really want and the shelf is empty. It's so frustrating, right? But that empty shelf, it's really just a symptom of a way bigger problem. A constant tug-of-war between supply and demand that businesses are always fighting. And this really gets to the core of it. It's this incredibly tough balancing act. See, on one hand, if you don't have enough capacity, you can't keep up with demand. That means lost sales, and maybe even worse, you've got unhappy customers who'll just go to your competitor. But then, on the other hand, having way too much capacity, think empty factories, idle trucks, staff with nothing to do, well, that's just burning money and wasting resources. So when we use this word capacity, what are we really talking about? Well, to put it simply, it's just the max amount of stuff a system can crank out in a certain amount of time. A great example is a restaurant. Its capacity is the total number of people it can possibly serve in one day. And every business, from your local coffee shop to a massive car factory, has one. Okay, so if you want to understand capacity, the first thing you have to do is find what's holding you back. And you know what? It almost always comes down to one single choke point, what we call the bottleneck. It sets the pace for the entire operation. So how do you actually find that weakest link? Let's make this super concrete. We're going to follow a single bottle on its journey through a supply chain, kind of like we're detectives on a mission to find the bottleneck. All right, stage one, the bottling plant itself. This is where it all begins. Looks like they can crank out just under 750,000 bottles a week. Okay, so that's our baseline number. Let's keep that in our back pocket and see how the next step stacks up. Okay, next step, the packing area. Whoa, look at that. They can handle 1.2 million bottles a week. That's a huge jump. They've got so much extra capacity, they're probably just sitting around waiting for bottles to show up. So yeah, safe to say, packing is not our bottleneck. All right, from packing, the trucks take over. So what's their capacity? Just over 800,000 bottles a week. So still higher than the bottling plant. The trucks aren't the problem either. The plot thickens. And that brings us to the final stop, the warehouse. This is where everything gets sorted and shipped out. Their total capacity is 720,000 bottles per week. And there it is. That is the lowest number we've seen. We have found our bottleneck. When you actually lay it all out like this in a chart, the problem just becomes glaringly obvious. Just look at that bar for the warehouse. It's the shortest one by a long shot. It literally doesn't matter how fast the packing team is or how many trucks they have. The entire system is capped at 720,000 bottles a week simply because that's the max the warehouse can push through the door. And this is the absolute key takeaway from all this. If this company went out and spent a ton of money on faster bottling machines or more trucks, it would be a complete and total waste of money. The only way to get more bottles out the door is to fix that bottleneck. They have to expand the warehouse. Okay, so identifying a bottleneck, that's all about fixing today's problems. But what about tomorrow? Companies have to make these huge long-term bets on how they think demand is going to grow. And there are basically three main ways to approach that. This is the million-dollar question for any CEO, right? Do you build that new factory before the customers show up? Or do you wait until you're already turning people away? And how you answer that question? Well, it pretty much defines your entire business strategy. So at a high level, companies tend to go down one of three paths. First, you've got the lead strategy. Think of a company like Amazon. They're famous for building massive warehouses before the demand is even there. They're betting on the future. The upside is they're always ready. The risk? If that growth doesn't show up, you're stuck with these huge, empty, very expensive buildings. Then you have the total opposite, the lag strategy. A small restaurant might wait until there's a line out the door every single night before they even think about expanding. It's safer financially, but the whole time you're making them wait, you're risking losing those customers to someone else. And finally, you've got the match strategy, which tries to split the difference, expanding in smaller chunks to stay close to demand. But it's tricky. You risk getting the timing just a little bit wrong. Right? But no matter how good your long-term plan is, it's never going to be perfect. The world is messy, right? Demand goes up, it goes down. So on top of that big strategy, businesses need a whole toolkit of short-term fixes to deal with these day-to-day mismatches. So when things get out of whack, you basically have two levers you can pull. You can either try to change your supply to match the demand, or you can get creative and try to change the demand to match your supply. And believe it or not, both are totally valid tactics.
Okay, so changing supply is the one we usually think of first. Say a construction company lands a big new project. What can they do? Well, they can ask the crew to work overtime. They can hire some temp staff. They could even go out and rent extra equipment. These are all classic ways to temporarily juice up your capacity to meet a surge. But here's the other side of the coin, and it can be just as powerful: changing the demand itself. Think about a restaurant with an early bird special. They're using a discount to basically bribe people to come in during the quiet 5 p.m. slot instead of the crazy busy 7 p.m. peak. Airlines do this all the time with their pricing, right? And doctors do it with appointment systems. In every case, they're managing their fixed capacity by nudging our behavior. So when we zoom out and look at the big picture, it's pretty clear that managing capacity isn't about finding some single magical answer. It's really about mastering this continuous, never-ending process of balancing and rebalancing.
You have to remember, this is a dynamic puzzle. It's not a static problem you solve once. Yeah, market trends shift, new competitors pop up, customer tastes change. The companies that really succeed are the ones that treat capacity less like a number they set in stone and more like a dial they're constantly adjusting, always forecasting, always tweaking, and always ready to make a change.
You know, the source material for this explainer puts it perfectly. Planning is never finished. It is continuous. It's not a task you check off a list. It's a cycle. Literally, as you're finalizing the plan for next month, you're already starting to sketch out ideas for the month after that. It's a loop that just never ends. So I'll leave you with this. The next time you see some new products just go viral and fly off the shelves, or you see a new restaurant with a line wrapped around the block, I want you to think about this capacity puzzle. Think about the huge strategic bets they made, the desperate hunt for bottlenecks, and all those frantic on-the-fly adjustments that are happening completely behind the scenes. Because that's the invisible engine that's going to decide if that viral hit becomes a long-term success story or just a flash in the pan.